I have to confess that President Biden reminded me more of Neville Chamberlain in his speech to the nation than I would have thought possible. I went back and read the speech carefully. Chamberlain had been so deeply scarred by World War I and the enormous loss of life that he desperately wanted to avoid a major war. As a result, he kept compromising and trying to find a way to work with Hitler. Ultimately, it failed, as Winston Churchill had warned him it would. But Chamberlain had a genuine, deep, sincere desire to avoid the level of bloodshed that in fact happened in World War II. And while he ultimately recognized he had no choice but to declare war on Germany, he saw it as an enormous failure and was deeply saddened. Well, I watched Biden's speech and I had the feeling that Chamberlain would have understood where Biden's coming from. Biden's world doesn't exist. Biden would like to be able to be even-handed. He talked on the airplane coming back home on Air Force One about Hamas as, quote, the other team. That's crazy. This isn't football or basketball. This isn't, the other team. This is a fight between civilization and a vicious, barbaric group who killed 40 babies, cut off the heads of some of the babies, who raped women, and when they died, drug them naked through the streets while people spit on them, who kidnapped grandmothers, one of whom was a Holocaust survivor herself. Imagine being a young girl surviving the Holocaust under the Nazis, and now as a grandmother being kidnapped by Hamas. There's no moral equivalency here. There's good and there's evil. And I'm not saying that Israel's perfect, but compared to Hamas, the easy test is simple. The Israelis put their military out front to save civilians. Hamas puts civilians out front so they'll get killed, so they can be used for propaganda war. Hamas wages war on YouTube. They wage war on TikTok. They understand the power of propaganda. That's why they lied about the missile that hit the hospital parking lot and killed people. It wasn't an Israeli missile. It was in fact fired by Islamic Jihad, one of the allies of Hamas. And yet they lied, and in America, we have a congresswoman who's still lying about it, which is, I think, should lead to her being censured by the Congress for lying to the country and for being a pro-terrorist member. And there are about 9 pro-terrorist members of the U.S. House. But Biden, if you take that speech and look at it carefully, he very briefly talks about Israel and immediately reverts in the 8th paragraph to talking about the Palestinians and the need to help the Palestinians and make sure that the Palestinians don't suffer. Now, how do you tell a country which lost the equivalent of 38,000 Americans? That's the population equivalent. We'd lost 38,000 Americans to barbarians. How do you tell that country that, we really care about you a lot, but now let me remind you to be very careful and make sure you don't hurt anybody on the other team? This was madness. He goes on then to almost immediately switch over to talk about Ukraine, which is clearly his real passion. And then he comes back to talk some more about a 2-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians, which has been a fantasy on the left for the last 40 years, has not happened. And certainly at the present time, given the level of violence against the Israelis, it's not going to happen in the near future. And then he closes by talking about how glad he is that he's able to get Egypt to provide humanitarian assistance to the Palestinians. Now, I would just say to you that this was a terrible speech that sent terrible signals of weakness. He briefly mentions Iran and concedes that Iran is involved both in helping the Russians in Ukraine and in helping Hamas attack Israel. And he says they will be held accountable. That is baloney. You know and I know that Joe Biden is not going to hold the Iranians accountable. If he was, he would freeze the $6 billion in Qatar. He would reestablish the very severe sanctions that President Trump had put on Iran, and he would go after the Iranians. As we approach the Christmas season, I wanted to share with you my friend. This is Ellis the elephant. This actual elephant sits on my desk as a reminder. It is made in America. It's unique. It's a limited edition, and it's a lot of fun. We find that little kids in particular really like having Ellis because very comfortable. And Ellis is a very patriotic elephant. In fact, he goes with the 7 books that my wife Callista has written on American history as seen by this time traveling elephant. So I think you'll find that if you're looking for your child or grandchild or a niece or a nephew, that this Christmas, the combination of the 7 history books about America told in a patriotic way with Ellis the elephant and an Ellis the elephant plush toy made in America, limited edition, I think you'll find that Ellis makes a great Christmas gift. And that's why I wanted to share my friend Ellis with you. You can order the Ellis the Elephant 7-book series and plush toy now by clicking on the link in the description below. My new book, March to the Majority, is now a bestseller and is available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble and retailers everywhere. Get it today by clicking on the link in the description below.